a rubber-soled shoe worn to minimize noise and escape detection. Valves for the diesel air intakes. Gauges for the diesel engines. One of the torpedo tubes, probably still loaded. A torpedo. Germany built more than 1,100 of these stealthy machines during the war. Today, only a handful remain. One of them is on display in Chicago. U-505 was captured by the U.S. Navy in 1944. 250 feet long, 22 feet wide, weighing 1,100 tons, this boat had only one purpose: to destroy. Looking at it from the outside reveals almost nothing about what made it work. Inside, it is a claustrophobic tube crammed with weapons and machinery. Torpedoes. These half-ton underwater guided missiles were the U-boat's primary weapon. They were stored and launched from 2 torpedo rooms, one at each end of the boat. "25 to 30 men would live crowded among the torpedoes for up to 3 months at a time. On the surface, 2 9-cylinder diesel engines drove the boat up to 18 knots, with a range of 11,000 miles. Underwater, electric motors took over, running off batteries located under the floor. But they had less than a quarter the power of the diesels. Submerged, the boat rarely went faster than 2 or 3 knots, with a range of barely 70 miles. Nor could it stay down long. 20 hours was about the limit before the batteries ran out and the crew starved for oxygen. At the center of the boat, the conning tower, and below it, the control room. A confusing maze of controls for steering, diving, and surfacing. It took about 9 months to build a boat like U-505, and it cost roughly $500,000. Compared to any other warship, it was cheap and quick to make. But it was built to attack. Its only defense was to hide deep in the ocean. There, its survival depended on its pressure hull. Not visible from the outside, the pressure hull is the submarine's only protection against the ocean. A long tube of circular ribs covered with steel plate. It's all that stands between the crew and thousands of tons of seawater. To destroy a submarine, it takes just one break in the pressure hull. The ocean does the rest. On the mystery wreck, the nature of the damage holds clues as to how the boat met its end. It must have been cataclysmic. The top of the pressure hull reveals an enormous crack, a giant split in the 1-inch steel. This boat must have suffered a massive explosion. The damage is centered in the control room. The conning tower is blown completely off the wreck, Whatever caused the explosion, with its pressure hull split wide open, the boat sinks like a stone, taking its crew to a death that cannot come fast enough. Whichever U-boat this is, its crew must have known the risk of venturing into the deep. For as long as submarines have existed, men have been dying in them. But despite the danger, the submarine has a powerful attraction: stealth. A goal as ancient as war itself. For centuries, designers around the world struggled to perfect a ship that can hide underwater. Submerging is easy. Early designs, like the one-man turtle used in the American Revolution, dive by flooding ballast tanks with seawater. To surface, this water is pumped out again. Today's modern submarines use the same method. But propulsion and a weapon are far more difficult problems. Early submarines rely on inefficient hand-cranked propellers. To attack, they must attach a bomb to the bottom of an enemy ship and try to get away, hopefully before it goes off. These limitations make early submarines far more dangerous to their operators than to their enemies. But the submarine is rescued from obscurity in 1866. An English engineer, Robert Whitehead, invents a bomb that can drive itself to the target from a safe distance: the torpedo. Unlike the gun, the traditional naval weapon, the new torpedo strikes below the waterline, where ships are most vulnerable. Early torpedoes only go in the direction they are pointed. But in the 1890s, when the gyroscope is added, the torpedo can now steer itself.
When the gyro was installed in the torpedo became a smart weapon. It was guided. So that even if the target was 90 degrees bearing from where you were pointing, you could turn the gyro 90 degrees, and as soon as the torpedo was fired, it would do a 90-degree turn and proceed to the target.
Whitehead originally intends his torpedo to be launched from tubes on land. But this underwater guided missile turns out to be the perfect weapon for the stealthy submarine. Now that it has a weapon, the submarine's remaining weakness is propulsion. At the dawn of the 20th century, motors replace hand cranking. Gasoline or diesel engines, which need air, are used on the surface. When submerged, electric motors run off batteries. By a fateful accident of history, the stealthy submarine and the smart torpedo are perfected just on the eve of World War I. Ironically, Germany is the last naval power to adopt the new vessel in 1906. The German term for it is Unterseeboot, an underwater boat. In just a few years, the whole world will come to know and fear its abbreviation: U-boat. As World War I begins, the submarine is not expected to play a pivotal role. But only 6 weeks into the war, a single German U-boat, U-9, sinks 3 British cruisers in less than an hour. The world is astounded.
The loss of all these cruisers and 3,000 men was a shock. It was like a Pearl Harbor for the British.
This is the first time the submarine ever showed its sort of raised its ugly head, you know, in a warfare situation, and nobody was prepared for it.
In Germany, the commander of U-9, Otto Weddigen, becomes a new kind of hero, the daring submariner, who can bring down the mighty British with this marvelous new machine.
For the German public, the image of the German submariner became very similar to what the American astronaut became for the United States public in the 1950s and 60s. That these men were warriors, but they were explorers, they were technicians, they were scientists, they were men who were able to do anything.
One of thousands of young Germans mesmerized by the exploits of Weddigen is Eric Topp.
There was a picture of him hanging in my sleeping room, and every night I saw Weddigen there. And, well, he was attacking there in the North Sea. He was attacking 3 cruisers, light cruisers, and he was sinking them. And, of course, at that time, that was a fantastic success.
Weddigen's success is especially remarkable given the primitive nature of his vessel. U-9 is not very stealthy. Its engines emit clouds of smoke that can be seen for miles. It takes 7 minutes to dive just 30 feet. But it only needs a crew of 24, and any weapon that lets 24 men take down thousands of the enemy is hard to resist. Germany quickly capitalizes on this unexpected success. Shocking the world, U-boats start attacking the cargo ships that keep England alive. But shock turns to outrage when a U-boat sinks the passenger liner Lusitania in May 1915. "1,200 people are killed. Now, a different image of German submariners is born. U-boat men are bloodthirsty monsters, preying on innocent women and children. But despite the world's condemnation, the stealthy submarine is too effective not to use. There is nothing to stop it. In Britain and America, scientists rush to develop weapons for anti-submarine warfare, or ASW. The first new device that results is the depth charge, a bomb set off by water pressure. It explodes once it reaches a certain depth. But the ships can only guess where the U-boat is. There is still no way to find a submerged submarine. In April 1917, U-boats sink 1 out of every 4 ships that sails for England. But the solution to the U-boat threat has been available all along. Not a new technology. It is a centuries-old naval tactic. Convoying, putting ships in groups, protected by escorts.
That's the bait. That's what the submarines are looking for, so they're forced to go to the convoy if they're going to sink any ships.
By concentrating ships into a few large groups, convoys empty the oceans. Most U-boats now go days without spotting a target. If a U-boat does find a convoy, when it attacks, it reveals its position to the escorts.
The escorts are all armed, so it's shifted the balance. A well-protected convoy would lose ships, but at the same time the escorts would get submarines, and it shifted the whole calculus of the equation.
After 3 years of war, the